Hey survivors, how are you? Happy Tuesday. Healing Conversations is back. We are just waiting for our guest to come on. Let's give her a few. Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. We're just waiting for our guest, Kimberly Rodney, to join us for another great healing conversation. She is an author of the book Discovering God in You, and we are waiting for her to join. Let's see if I can send her an invitation.
Oops, hold on. I got the camera. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I am good. Good
I
evening.
love your glasses. I'm trying to get some big ones.
Thank you. I will tell you where I got it from before we get off this evening.
No problem.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I just want to greet everyone as they coming in.
Hi, everybody.
We are just excited to have you this evening, Kimberly. And I'm excited to get into the conversation. I love
Yes,
good talk.
yes, yes,
I love
yes.
doing healing conversations. Um, and I think a little bit is going to be some girl talk this evening. So I'm excited
Definitely,
about that. And
definitely. Thank you for
um,
having me.
of course, of course. I'm just going to tell you, as we're waiting for a few people to come in, good
Okay.
evening.
Good
That
evening.
I really enjoyed reading your book, Discovering God in You. I have it in front of me. So, of course, one of the things that I absolutely love about having this conversation this evening is that I was able to read it and like get all of the good nuggets.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm excited about not only what you shared in your book about your walk and your struggles. Um, as you are continuing to pursue a relationship in Christ, but also the fact that you were vulnerable enough and that you thought it not, as the saints say, thought it not robbery to share your to share your story. So I so appreciate you for doing that. And sometimes it's just not easy to be vulnerable and
no,
to allow God to use you. But I appreciate you doing that. And I'm sure so many people are going to be positively impacted by you doing so.
yeah.
So, like, let's just get into it.
Okay.
Just share a little bit about yourself. We know that you're an author. Don't share how you started what made you write the book yet, because that's going to be my next question. But for those who don't know you, who are like meeting you for the first time, just share a little bit of who you are, anything else that you want us to know. Good
Okay.
evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly J. Rodney. In addition to being a new author, I'm a wife and a mom. I've been a social worker for the past 18 years, and out of those 18 years, I've been a hospice social worker for 13 years. So I've been
Wow.
in the field for a long time. Um, and also, I thought about this question when you asked me last night, Saya, and I think I'm also just a woman being refined, ongoing, and
Mhm.
being, evolved. I mean,
Yeah.
not evolved yet, but evolving into the woman and that God created me to be.
Yeah.
Um, and part of it, was sharing this story.
Definitely.
Mhm.
I think as we are, walking and making a conscious and intentful decision to walk, this life with God, I think we will continue to like, evolve, and we're not going to be the same. We're not going to like everything that we go through, but it's going to be for the good in the end. So tell us about discovering God in you, and how did that come about, and what made you write the book. And if you guys have any questions for Kimberly, make sure you drop it in the chat.
Sure. So discovering God in you was what is my life story. I
Mhm.
shared a lot about my journey, especially in my 20s, going into my 30s. Um, discovering God in you was a space and season and time for me that I dealt a lot with my identity, or struggling with who I was, trying to figure out my worth, my purpose, and just I felt, if I could put a word to it, I would say I felt in bondage for a long time.
Mhm.
And I think that's why I put freedom at the end. And I had a book in me 17 years now, but I didn't quite know what it was going to be like. I just always loved journaling. I think part of journaling is a way to kind of release. And it
Mhm.
was my constant communication with God and my intimate time with Him. And he was the only person that knew that because I don't share a lot of times with people that I journal, just between me and him. And I go
Mhm.
way back from my early 20s, and I just started writing. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. Every year I will put on my gold list, I'm going to write a book. I didn't know how it was going to happen until 2 years ago when I met Taniki Dakers from Vine Publishing, and that was all
Yeah.
divine. So she
Yeah.
became my
Yes, it
book
was.
coach. She held me accountable, and so we are here today. And October 1st, we launched Discovering God in You.
Yeah. Awesome. You talk about being in bond. First of all, let me just go back to, I have to say something about the journaling, because journaling is just like how my book came about. The journey
Mhm,
continues. So I can definitely relate to journaling, and journaling like your innermost thoughts that I know for me, at one point, it was just between me and God, and I never thought that it would be shared with anybody else. So I can
mhm,
definitely relate to that. Talk about being in bondage, because you said you felt like you were in bondage for so long, and this is why you know, you use freedom at towards the end of your book.
mhm. When I say in bondage, I'm more so related to dealing with mental health issues.
Hmm.
And I spoke about that a lot in my book, dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression. I didn't know what it was. I mean, as a profession, I did, but I didn't claim it. I was like, oh, I'm just going through stuff. I'm just
Hmm.
having these moments where I'm crying all the time and I'm irritable. But all of that is depression, you know? And I think until I identified it when I was going to therapy, I'm like, damn, I've been in this space for a long, long time. And
Hmm.
I think when I was, just mentioned bondage, I felt that, after, going through my therapy and, trying to get closer to God, I felt like I was kind of coming out of that space, that dark space.
Hmm.
And so many people are, battling with this in secret, and they don't really tell people. They wear this smile on their face, oh, everything is good, and
Yeah.
everything is not good, because life is going to throw stuff at us all the time, constantly. When we think we're getting over something else, we're facing something else. So we have to have, an anchor, I would say. We have to have a relationship with God. That's like a must, I think.
I
It's
must.
so vital, especially today, you know?
Yeah. Um, so this is gonna sidetrack you a little bit, but since you did bring it up, I am such a huge advocate for mental health, and there is there's a lot of misconceptions about
Mhm,
mental health and being a Christian, right?
mhm,
Um, I've talked about it before. I've done interviews, and I spoke about it then, and I think it's so important for our community. And when I say our community, the African American community, and
mhm,
even beyond, but I think it's particularly important for the African American community because we have such stigma when it comes to therapy. right?
Mhm.
And mental health. So whenever someone brings that up, I always ask them to share their views about mental health and therapy and being a Christian, because so many people believe that the two can't go together,
Right.
right? And as I'm saying this, I'm looking at my cousin coming on who I did an interview with him, and we talked about the same thing. So, um, can you talk a little bit about that and talk about that you can do both? Like you can have a relationship with God, you can walk with Jesus, and be cognizant with your mental health. And
I'm sorry, you broke up for a little bit, but you know and when you say mental health, it, especially in our community, a lot of people feel shamed, you know, or people will throw out the word crazy, and people will throw
hmm
out, oh, well, if you have a relationship with God, why you have to go to therapy? God should be your everything.
hmm
But I believe that
hmm
God placed people in professional, hats for a reason.
yeah,
That's why there's doctors. That's why there's lawyers. That's why there's therapists. Because he knew that we can't do this by ourselves. That in addition to having a relationship with him, we need other tools as well. And one of the tools is having a counselor. And I'll tell anybody, I went to therapy off and on. It was never consistent, but I needed it. I needed that outlet. I needed that space to just do me, cleanse me. It's not a healing thing. I'm not saying that therapy is the low and be all, but
hmm
it does help. It
hmm
really does help. And we, as a people, we can't be ashamed of it. We can't, because you
thank
you
you so
you
much.
see that it's going on, and it's like it's at its high, especially after COVID. People dealt
Yes.
so much with isolation and loss and grief.
hmm
People are really suffering in silence.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for saying that, because I do believe that even in our community, there has been an increase of depression and anxiety
Mhm.
coming out of COVID. Like it is really a big deal. So thank you for even speaking on that. So in your book,
Mhm.
let's get into it, right? In your book, you talk about one of the things that resonated with me. You talk about the loss of your dad, and I'm not sure what page it is found in, but I know when I
Mhm.
read it, I was like, I need to highlight this, because there's so many people that are dealing with losses, right? They're going through so much. And you write, I can't remember my tears or sadness. Maybe I just didn't quite know what death was. I wasn't provided a safe space to discuss my dad's death. Um, and safe spaces are so important, right?
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about that and where you were at the time, and why was that so vital for you to be able to deal with and to order to move forward?
Um, so my dad is a very touchy subject for me until this day. He died
Okay.
38 years ago. So it still resonates with me, his loss,
Mhm.
even as an adult woman. But as children, and because I'm dealing with it in my profession, I see it all the time with parents that are either diagnosed with something. They don't want to tell their young kids that they're dying, and it's like a secret. Why? The most thing I tell families is to be honest with your children.
Mhm.
You have to prepare them. And when I was 5, my mom was very young. She was in her 20s. She didn't know about all these resources, or she didn't know that it was good to have conversations about kids about what's actually happened to their other parents. That is a possibility that you're going to lose your dad. She didn't know. She was dealing with her own grief. So I was kind of
Mhm.
like pushed to the side and had to figure it. Oh, my dad is not there anymore.
Mhm.
Um, and just to backtrack, I came to this country when I was 4 from the island of Dominica. It was me and my mom. I remember this. And we lived with my grandmother, and I think I mentioned it in a book. And then my dad would come visit, and we actually moved in together as a family. And that's when he got sick. So I didn't really can't remember spending so much time with him, when we came to this country. But he was still gone. I remember vividly how the funeral looked, what he wore, what I was doing, because it was a traumatic thing at that time. But to just go back to your question, it's so important to communicate with our children. It's so important to, when you see signs like, oh, something's going on, he's acting strange, like, why is he behaving like this? Sometimes it's not really what we think it is. It might be something deeper. And so that's the sign to say, maybe my son or my daughter needs to speak to somebody. Maybe I should just give them an opportunity to speak to somebody else, because I don't think I could do it, because sometimes as parents we can't. And so I wasn't provided that space, but to this day, I don't blame my mom for not doing that. I understand it now as an adult, but growing up, I'm like, okay, how come she never really spoke about him? Why come we didn't go to the burial to see him after he died? It's not until I really got to be an adult I started going. She didn't know. Some parents just don't know, or it's too painful for them to even address it at that point, because there's probably still harboring that loss within. So I will just say, when we're faced with that, you just have to be honest with children. No matter how hard it is as an adult to talk about it, we have to keep it real with them, because kids nowadays are smart. They know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for saying that. That kids they're very in tune. They know, they may not know exactly what's going on, but they do know that something is different, right? And I think a lot of the problems in regards to even, starting that conversation, if there is a parent who is sick, that we don't know how to do that. Right? Some of us don't know how to do that. We don't even know how to, because we don't know how to express it ourselves as adults. So that's when therapy comes in, right? And seeking support comes in, because you may not know what to do, but as you said, you should not ignore it, right? Don't pretend like it doesn't exist, because we do that too. It's like the big elephant in the room. Nobody talks about. We want to pretend like it doesn't even exist. It's not even there. And that just does not help the situation at all. It leads to so many problems, unresolved grief, right? And so, like you said, it wasn't until you were adult that you were able to process everything, and find
And I
some
was
kind of
grieving. I
closure.
started grieving at a later age,
Yes.
of loss. And that's what happens.
So thank you so much for sharing about that. Um, if you guys have questions for Kimberly, just drop it in the chat. I'm going to go on
Okay.
because to another thing that resonated with me as I was reading. In chapter 2, you talk about turning 40, right? All right. Yep.
The
Turning
big
40.
4-0. Oh my
The
gosh.
big 4-0, right? And how you had so many mixed emotions. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up is because we have so many, and I'm going to say just as women, because it may be men too, but we have so many expectations of us that, like, okay, at 40, I'm going to do this, I'm going to have this accomplished, I'm going to have that accomplished. I know I did it. And getting ready to turn 50 next year, I have all of that stuff, right? And I had to
Stop.
kind of like,
You know,
yes,
don't
getting
do
ready to
that.
turn the big 50 next year, yes. So I found I had to catch myself, because I found myself doing it. And
Yeah.
someone who was near and dear to me was like, no, you need to stop, because you're
Mhm.
doing it again. And the
Yeah.
thing about it is that I realized I was doing it again, like, because
Mhm.
it's familiar, like I've been doing this. So
Mhm. Mhm.
the whole expectation of, what I did accomplish, what I didn't accomplish, all that when we turn a significant age. Talk about what that was for you, and how you had to kind of look and to see where you were and what you had to
Mhm.
um,
So, I mean, whenever we're facing like a big milestone, everyone makes like
Mm-hmm.
this big, oh, what you're doing? What's your plans?
Yep.
You're about to turn 40. And I just
Yep.
wasn't in that space because I equated me being 40 with accomplishments, with accolades, with having a
Mm-hmm.
home or being married and being
Mm-hmm. Yep.
financially free. And none of those were
Yep.
happening, you know? So
Yep.
I went again into that dark space, I'm like feeling bad about myself. And I just, I don't think I had went back to therapy at that time, but I had to kind of lean in more to God because I'm like, I'm here, I'm 40, I'm healthy, I'm living, I'm breathing. And instead of like really focusing on what I didn't have, I really tried to focus on what I did have, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then, going into 40, I think that was the year before 2020, the COVID, and then going into 2020, that just kind of brought things to the open when we faced that. So many
Yeah.
people were, losing their loved ones. So many people were dying. You had to appreciate life. So, as women, I think sometimes we compare ourselves a lot to other women, and what they've accomplished and where they're at. And God has our own journey and our own story already planned out for us. Everybody's timing is different. Mine certainly is, so I think, looking back when I turned 40, I think I had to go through that for a reason because I'm where I am today. I haven't arrived at this place that, I'm still, he's still pruning me. He's still growing me. And I know he has so much more for me, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So, okay, so we have a couple of comments. Nadine said good night.
Hey, Stacey.
T-Till. T-Till says black don't crack.
That's on track. That's right.
And it looks like Sweetie C says amen. So thank you for sharing that. We are on, we don't need to compare ourselves, right? Um, and instead of looking at what we don't have, um, to appreciate what we do have, right? And know that God is, He is just dependable, and we can trust Him and we can trust His process. Um, and sometimes that's challenging and that's hard, but that's something that we have to constantly remind ourselves, right? Um, thanks for amazing conversation, much needed. Thanks,
Thank
Tito. So
you.
talk about your purpose and how was that having like finding your purpose or trying to figure out what your purpose was, and then I'm going to ask you about your worth, finding your worth.
I think, and it probably goes with the next question. I think our purpose is so much bigger than us, you know? Um, and a lot of times when people think about what's your purpose, why are you here, what are you supposed
Mhm.
to be doing? I mean, those questions are, normal questions to ask. But I think that, when I wrote the book and I put at the end A Young Woman's Guide to Identity, Worth, Purpose, and Freedom, we can only really find those in God. We can only really find those in our relationship with Him.
Mhm.
When we look outside ourselves for it, we're going to be disappointed a lot of times. When we look outside of it, oh, I only have purpose if like I'm a mom. There's a lot of women that can't have children, you know.
Mhm.
I only have purpose if I have like a six-figure earning income or more.
Yes.
Some people, the happiest people, maybe people that don't have those things, I mean, it's good to attain like, financial freedom, but our purpose is not found in those things. And I had to find that out because as I did write in the book that I thought that my purpose was being a certain person or having a certain degree. I look back at it now, I'm like, I should have went to city school because because I'm still paying back those private loans. But you
Yep.
know, I just felt that I always had to kind of ask God, what's my purpose? But what's my purpose in you? I know my purpose is bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about me. This book was written for a purpose. Like I prayed and I hope that, whoever touches it, they can find themselves, but not find themselves in themselves, but with God. Like they can find that relationship that they're seeking. They can find that void that they have for so many years, like they trying to fill it with other things than him. Because
Mm-hmm.
we're human. We do that. We're not perfect, and that's what also I wanted to come across, because I'm not perfect. I'm not sitting here that I had everything together, because I really didn't, and I still don't. But, I'm a work in progress. We all are, you know.
So, when you talk about being a mom or having a six figure income, that not only is that not a part of our purpose, but that is not who we is. A lot of people tie that in their identity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So who I am, I'm a mom, right? And yes, that's perfectly fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not just who you are. That may
Right.
be a portion of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we'll just kind of reel things off. Well, I have to I have to make six figures. I'm only six. And a lot of times it's tied into identity and being successful.
Yeah.
So just to even like go a little bit beyond of what you said, like not only purpose, but identity and being successful. I'm only successful if I have a six-figure income. I'm only successful if I'm able to get married and have a child. Like that is what we tie into being successful.
Well, that's what
And
society puts on us too.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes.
that's yeah, that's what society. And then a lot of people, they beat themselves up when they see, as I said before, see everybody on social media posting
Hmm.
pictures and this is where I
Hmm.
am, or beating
Hmm.
themselves up about it. But um, I'm sorry, you had said something about worth.
Yes, but how were you able to get to the point of that you were able to understand your purpose? How were you able to get to that? And then I'm going to ask you about worth.
When I wrote that chapter, I had started off with like I was in an accident, a car accident a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that really put it, like really put
Into perspective.
into perspective for me. Like,
Yeah.
he really it wasn't like this horrific accident, but it could have
Mm-hmm.
went that way. I could have been
Mm-hmm.
gone. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had to really kind of zone in, like, I'm really here. Like, he's not finished with me yet. I think our purpose always change. It's not gonna stay the same. When we enter a different season or go to new heights or levels, our purpose change. It's
Mm-hmm.
ever evolving. So it's not just one thing. And maybe, I don't know if I'm answering the question. I feel like my purpose is just not one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be one thing today and tomorrow it could be another. Again, we're not here for ourselves. We're here to
Mm-hmm.
be a blessing to other people. We're here to be, to tell people about God. Basically, at the end of the day, and live unapologetically. Because I think for so many years, for me, I don't really talk about my relationship with God. Like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
believe God. Yeah, I go to church. But to
Mm-hmm.
really like say, listen, this book was not me. I'm telling you, it was not me. This was all God. You
I
know.
can totally
Um,
relate. Totally
so
relate.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know how it happened.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
because I prayed about it and I'm like, wow, God, you just provided, because it's not easy to publish a book, financially and resources or whatever. It's not.
Not at
Um,
all.
but it's definitely part of my purpose. This is a part of my purpose. I didn't know it back then, but this is definitely me being a social worker is part of my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one thing.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. So I think we get to the point that it's like when you sometimes we do understand, like, so you being becoming a social worker, I'm sure God knew at this point that some years down the line she will publish this book.
Mm-hmm.
At the you understand, so it's like we may not understand it at the time, but we have to trust God's timing.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about your worth and how is it going through different experiences and coming to the realization of understanding your worth, understanding who you are in Christ, and not letting other people define who you are and your worth. Can you talk about
You know, especially when you are growing into that young adult phase
that?
and you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure life out, you've left the nest, you probably went to college or moved out. You're trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out who you are. You're going to make mistakes. I've made many, many, many mistakes and still may.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of times I think during that early adult years for me, I did things and I made choices I look back and I'm like, that wasn't really me being worthy of myself. That wasn't me valuing myself.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, God still loved me. You know, he didn't hold that up against my head. Oh, you did this and you're not worthy. I said that about myself. Like, you're not worthy enough to be attached to God or have a relationship with him. Because you have that voice that
Negative
tells you that on one
feeling.
side and you have the other one.
Mhm. And
But
as you say, you talk about beating yourself up. That's part of that as well. Yeah.
because we there's gonna be seasons, especially as women, as young women, we're gonna feel like we're not worthy of love, because we got our hearts broken, or we're not worthy of um, having good things happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
But we are, because he created us. He already saw who the woman that we are going to be, like, way ahead of
Mm-hmm.
what we see right now.
Yeah.
So I had to really attach my worth with him. Like, I can't look for, I'm just going to name a name, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I can't look for Tom, or I can't look for my homegirl to validate me or tell me that you're worth it, girl. No, God said that. He said it in his word.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. And there's a danger in not understanding your worth, right? There's a danger of feeling not worthy of love because when we're at that point in our life that we feel like we're not worthy of love, then we start to take in and accept any
anything.
old thing, right? Um, and it usually goes down a disastrous path, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Um, but there's a danger of not understanding your worth and who you are in God, and understand that you may not feel right, as you said, you may not feel, but what does God say about you? What does His Word say? Who you are in Him?
mhm,
And
mhm.
so I just wanted to be clear and just reiterate that there's a danger in not understanding that because then we invite people,
Yeah,
things into our life that should not be and that work to our detriment when
yeah,
we don't understand our worth.
yeah. Definitely, I totally agree to that. Not to go into anything deep, deep, but
Mm-hmm.
you, and sometimes it's in hindsight, right? Like, oh, if I didn't make that decision, or if I had known, like, I'm much better than this, then I wouldn't have gotten to this situation,
Yeah,
you know. So yeah, there's a big danger in it. We don't see it when we're in it,
yeah,
sometimes. It's by, hindsight.
yeah. And like you said, sometimes it is hindsight. And so we just, we pray for God's grace and covering. But
Hmm.
there are times, and I'm just going to say it, there are times that we know,
Me
because we
too.
didn't, we didn't been down the road, right? And we decided to go and be with Johnny, knowing that Johnny is not good for us, right? We
Yeah.
already know that because Johnny already broke our heart one time, right?
Mm-hmm.
He already broke our heart one time, and we already know the things that Johnny does as dangerous and not good for us. But we we go there anyway, and sometimes we go there, and I'm just trying to be, real and honest because I think that's what is needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because feelings of loneliness, and I'm not going to find anyone better, and all of that. So sometimes
We
we, like
settle,
you said,
settle.
we
That's the
settle.
word.
Thank you. We
Mm-hmm.
settle. We settle. Well, you know what? There's nobody else, and I'm not going to find anyone. And I'm not all that good anyway, right? Um, so there's a danger in that, and like you said, um, is sometimes it is hindsight, and we just pray for God's covering, and then there's times that we blatantly do things that we are so aware of
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
and then when we're in it, we like, oh God, how did I get here?
You know how you got here.
Right. So if we're gonna be real, that's there's times that we don't know, and then there's times that we do know, and there's other things that drive us there, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a danger in that. But thank you for speaking about that. Um, what was your moment? What was your moment of surrender? Or your moment of, okay, God, I can't do this by myself. I keep messing this up. What was that moment for you? If you can share that.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think I'm constantly surrendering to God. It's an
Mm-hmm.
everyday thing, you know. Yeah, I think just as women on a whole, I'm gonna speak for myself. I
Mm-hmm.
constantly surrender because I'm a human and I make human mistakes. But I also have to acknowledge it too. Because if anybody knows us, it's him. God knows us. You know, we can't fool him. You know, he knows our thoughts before we even speak. So I'm to answer your question, I feel like there wasn't a specific moment in my life where I said I just surrender. I feel like I'm
Mm-hmm.
always surrendering to God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, listen, I can't do this on my own. Because we're going to be faced with different situations at different times and different seasons. I'm in a season right now. I'm like, my back is up against the wall. God, what am I going to do? I
Mm-hmm.
surrender it to you. I have to because
Mm-hmm.
we as people, as human beings, but our bodies can deal with only so much. Our minds can deal with only so much. That's why it's so much like heart attacks, strokes,
Mm-hmm.
diseases, because our body just
Mm-hmm.
can't deal with it. The
Mm-hmm.
challenges is that that we face every day. So I'm in constantly in surrender
Constantly
mode.
surrendering.
Hmm.
So I know you said that there was when you got into the car accident, and you said it wasn't serious. It was, but you understood that it could be worse
Yeah.
than what it was.
Hmm.
So what was that experience like for you? I know you said you're constantly surrendering. Was that like a wake up call for you? What did that do for you?
It really made me realize I'm not in control.
Hmm.
I'm not in control of what happens. When we walk out that door each day, right? We don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's why we got to constantly be prayed up, like
Hmm.
just covered always, because we don't know what we're going to face when we go out there, even in our homes. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
But it definitely was an eye opener to me that unfortunate things are going to happen to us that we don't plan, because we can have one plan and God has a different one, you
Hmm.
know. But I do think everything that happened to us that is unfortunate could be a blessing in disguise, right? Because that accident was a blessing in disguise for me.
Hmm.
And I didn't see it yet until years later. But
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, God, you saved me for this because I had to go through this to get this, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As you say that, I think about the pandemic and how if we did not realize that we were not in control before,
hmm
if you got the lesson, right? Because there was a lesson for
yeah,
being in lockdown. There
in
was a lesson
isolation.
in not being able to go out. Everybody, and I think Pastor T.D. Jakes describes it as everybody had to go to their room, right? Everybody was sent to their room, right? So if you did not know that before, you knew during the pandemic that you were not in control
Right.
because it didn't matter whether you were rich or poor or
Mhm.
it did not matter. So if you were like some people who got the lesson because there was a lesson in it, right? That
Definitely.
we're not in control.
Mhm.
We're not in control. And although it appears that we are almost functioning back to normal, um, we need to remember what happened, right?
Mhm.
We need
Mhm.
to remember how we were all locked down and we were not in control. Um, so I think that was just another example and another way of surrendering. A lot of people had to look at their lives and they had to look at their family experiences. Some
Mhm.
people realized that they were not spending time with their family. Some people realized that they had to work on their marriage.
Mhm.
One of the things that I do notice coming out of the pandemic, there was a lot of books that came out. So all these
Yeah.
books that's coming out now, they were birthed in the pandemic.
That's some time. That's I was definitely
That
my book
that's
is a pandemic book.
it's a
Definitely.
yes. So people were doing some work.
Yeah.
We were not able to go, but people were working.
That's
You
why I
know,
say it
those
was
people,
a blessing
yeah.
in disguise for so many people, you know.
And that's
That
and also as a reminder of that we have to look at not just what we don't have, but what we do have, and
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
grateful for what we do have. So
Definitely.
um, we're almost coming to an end, but I want you to. Is there anything particular in the book, as far as struggles or experiences that you went through that you feel like is pertinent and really important to share?
Mm. Let me see. That's a good question. You didn't tell me that question last
I
night.
did not. I did not. I snuck that one on you. But now that we're
Um,
kind of like in the midst of it, I feel like that I need to ask you that.
you know what? I could, from the top of my head, I think that's pertinent is the affirmations.
Hmm.
I
Talk
think
about that.
I wish I had this affirmation when I was growing up. You know,
Mm,
I wish I had someone tell me, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, or I am chosen, or I am unique, and I can do all things. I wish I had someone tell me that because I think that makes such a difference in a child's life, you know, a young
mhm,
person's life when they are affirmed constantly. You know,
mhm,
not telling your baby, oh, you look so cute, you so handsome. No, there's
mhm,
other things that we can tell our children because as they grow up to adults, they will walk into a room with their heads up high and not low. You know, they'll know that, yeah, I could be the only woman in that room, but I could still have control over that room. Right.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think the affirmations in there are so powerful. And I also, the space, let me just show my book real quick if y'all didn't see it.
Mhm,
Um, the space with the journaling part is important because that's the sections that you could write down your thoughts and probably take it to beyond. I mean, I'm definitely going to expand on this book, you know,
mhm,
but journaling is like so many people don't take advantage of it. And even, you know, as a counselor, a lot of caregivers, I would tell you, you're going through a lot. Write about it because I'm not always there for you to talk to, you know, write about it. When I come back, we could, you know, if you want to share or feel comfortable, it's so important to journal. Um, so I
I don't
think
mean
those
to cut
are
you off, but I am Kia Brown said extremely important. And she said, show it again.
the Yes, it's so beautifully designed.
Yes, it is.
But yes, so the affirmations, I think it's very pertinent in the book, and um of course the scriptures,
Mhm.
we do have to stay in his word. I'm gonna be honest with you, there's times that I waver in his word, but I know it's important. I know it's important. So
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think affirmations are so important.
mhm,
Scriptures, and even, as I said, I love journaling, and I was just having a conversation with someone today, like just saying I need to journal because as a counselor, right, myself, so I know sometimes we kind of like we kind of get stuck, right? We're just like everybody else. We
mhm,
get stuck, right? And um we need to release. And for me, that's what journaling is. Journaling is a
mhm,
release. It's a
definitely.
release. And I was just saying to someone today, like I got to journal.
Mhm,
It's time. And because I'm supposed to be doing it on a regular basis, and time,
mhm,
life happens, time gets away from you.
mhm,
And but there's there's moments like that God says, come here,
mhm,
it's time for you to sit and
mhm.
be still.
Definitely.
So journaling is definitely that. And just writing down and memorizing scriptures, or writing it on a index card and like putting it around the house.
I got stickies
All of
on
those
my
things.
wall. Yes, I have
Mhm.
stickies on my wall. It's so important. And sometimes I bypass it in the morning, but I have to be intentional about it,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
constantly read what I wrote and writing. There's a scripture, Habakkuk 2:2. Write it down and make it plain. It's so
Yeah.
important because the things that I've written in my journal, I've seen come in fruition. I've seen
Mhm.
manifested. It's so important to write things down. We don't really take advantage of it, but it's important. It's in God's word.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions
Any
for
questions? Any
Kimberly?
questions? Thank you, y'all, for supporting the people that I knew and the people that I don't know. Saya's support, everybody.
Um, Last question. What do you want? I originally said women, right? But
Mhm.
I'm women or men, whoever reads this book, what do
Yes,
you want them to take away from this book? Whoever picks up this book, what do you want them to take away from
that it doesn't matter the poor choices that we make.
it?
It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter that sometimes we don't feel good about ourselves, right? What matters is what God says about us. And when we lean into Him and really, really be intentional about just having a relationship with Him, He changed our whole entire trajectory. You know, I really want people to, especially now, the days that we're in, I really want people to really find their true selves in Him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, that we can only find that our identity in Him, our worth, our purpose, and just being free and being, not in bondage. We weren't created to be in bondage. We were created to live our best life, to be our best, um, and to be unapologetic about our relationship with Him. We should not be ashamed of Him. He created us. So, I mean, to sum it all up, I really want people to really take their relationship with God to that next level. Really, really just, I need to take my relationship with God on that next level. So when I'm saying it to everyone tonight, or whoever's listening, or the people that'll pick up this book, let's take our relationship with God to that next level, because he wants us to be close to Him. He wants us to be unapologetic about who He is in our lives. So
I am Kia Brown says, when will you write a version for young men?
I I do. You said that to me. I know. I'm definitely 2023 is going to be definitely I'm going to start my second. I don't want it to be, like 5, 10 years. Oh wait,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more, and I just have to really pray about that. Exactly
Mm-hmm.
which route he wants to take me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you,
Lastly,
Kia.
lastly, how can people find you? Where can they find you? How can they follow you? Anything that you have coming up, please share that.
So you can find me on Instagram, Kimberly J. Rodney. I'm also on
Mhm.
Facebook. Just, Google my name, Kimberly Rodney. I'm also on TikTok,
Yeah,
Kimberly J.
that TikTok.
Rodney. My son is TikToking all the time. I do have a website, www.kimberly. I should put it in. Let me put it in the thing.
Okay.
And also, I do have you can find my book on Amazon. Sorry, oops, I touched it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I do have a gift sets for the Christmas that just came out last night.
Mm-hmm.
I have it posted on my Instagram. And if you are interested in giving a young woman or anybody a gift, message me in on Instagram, or you can email me from my website. But I'm gonna put it up.
Okay. Meanwhile, while she's writing, I'm gonna show the book.
Yeah.
Isn't it pretty?
Yeah, I love the colors.
I love the pink because I'm a pink person.
Really?
I love the pink and how it's highlighted with the yellow and the blue. So,
hmm
yeah. All right, guys. So while she's putting that in the chat, if you have any questions, put it in there before we end this evening.
I'm so learning all of this stuff, Saya, for real.
Mhm.
Like this is
No
like a new
problem.
world for me. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you. You made me feel so comfortable. I was nervous all day. I was like, God.
No worries.
Because
No
I'm
worries.
really
It was
getting
my
into the
pleasure.
speaker role. Like, I'm really, really trying to get into the speaker role. Like, for somebody that's been in the field, I talk to people all the time, or groups and individuals. I'm just like, what's wrong with you, girl? You do this for a living. But when the attention is on
Yes,
it's
it's
a
different.
different, it's
Yes.
a different ballgame,
Yeah.
but God, he did his thing tonight. Thank you for making me feel so comfortable. And
Absolutely, no problem. My
but
pleasure.
definitely,
I so enjoyed the conversation,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you're going to be expert. Like in no time, you're going to be expert. Not a big deal. I am Kia Brown says thank you for sharing. Awesome
Thank
conversation.
you.
God bless. So I'm
Thank you.
going to share this with you, Kimberly, so you can hopefully share it on your page. So
Okay,
just give
great.
me a few. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this
Thank you,
evening.
everyone. Appreciate
And,
everyone. Thank
and
you. Thank
I
you,
look
Bonnie.
forward to having you back, maybe
Yes,
from a social work
well,
perspective, and
definitely,
also for the
definitely,
next book.
definitely. Thank you,
All
Saya.
right.
God bless. All right, take
Bye
care.
bye.
All
Good
right.
night.
How do I get off? Hmm. Do I just, okay, leave.